Staying with our leading story, the horse trading between political parties in the Government of National Unity continues to hold up the announcement of a new executive. Leaked letters between the ANC and the DA have made their way into the public domain, and revealed the division of ministries as the main sticking point. For some analysis, I am now joined by political analyst, Professor Sethulego Matebesi. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for your time. As the waiting, of course, continues, we continue to reflect on some of the little bits and pieces we glean from these letters and, of course, the conversations that are taking place across the nation. Your sense as to whether we've reached that penultimate point, and the president is indeed, as people suggest, about to make that announcement finally. Do you get that sense?
Yes, good afternoon, Voyo, and good afternoon to your viewers. I think we're all getting that sense, myself included, that perhaps after yesterday's meeting between the Democratic Alliance leader and President Cyril Ramaphosa, that we are now moving to a point where we say we can move to the next chapter in the history of this country, and that is to ensure that Parliament plays its role, oversight role, post the 2024 elections.
Just your sense from, I will start with the letter by the leader of the Democratic Alliance, not only, in other words, beyond simply asking for, two more executive positions, but did you get a sense that they are indeed committed not only to the Government of National Unity, but to the work that needs to be done? Did that letter give you any sense as to where the headspace of the leader of the opposition is?
Yeah, well, it's going to be very difficult to respond to a question of that nature, because for me, it's a question of we all know, or even a case of we all know the performance of the Democratic Alliance wherever they govern. But I expected much more from the Democratic Alliance in terms of setting the tone to other parties in situations like this, where it seems as if we've reached almost like Carl II. What do you do then? You, as actually the bigger brother in this picture, and I will refer to the DA, compared to all the other political parties, should have demonstrated capable leadership. And I don't think they came forth in demonstrating that. Yes, but some members, if you're a member of the Democratic Alliance, you will also feel emboldened and actually proud that your party stands firm. But we now, from this situation, need focus on what is important for this country. And I don't think this back and forth discussions sends confidence to the electorate after the 2024 elections.
The IFP yesterday said they did anticipate a bit of, delays, because this situation has never been arrived at before, as reflected by the outcome of the elections, of course. But they too were frustrated by the fact that it has taken so long. Do they have a point?
Yeah, the IFP, and by the way, this has been their second press conference after the elections, speaking about the so-called GMU. And we also have Al Jamaa coming out actually very scathing against the posture of the Democratic Alliance. But we should also be mindful and look at the current political landscape in terms of the electoral outcome. The Democratic Alliance with more than 20% of electoral support. they perhaps feel entitled to what they are demanding. And parties like the IFPs and all the smaller ones, and it's just natural that they would want to see a speedy resolution or a solution to this impasse that we are currently facing in our country. But I foresee a situation going forward where some of these smaller parties that are part of the GNU actually ganging up against the DA going forward when critical issues needs to be discussed, because the DA already during this round has been blamed as being unpatriotic or just looking inwards to what they can get out of this particular situation.
But Prof, I mean, why should these smaller players be the ones to gang up, as you say, against the Democratic Alliance? The Democratic Alliance is a participant here, like all the other parties. It may be the biggest of them, you know, but it is a participant. Why isn't or do you believe that the ANC is taking the leadership that it is supposed to take?
No, the ANC is taking the leadership that it's supposed to take, but where does it happen all the time? As I've indicated, we first have Al Jama, and that for me was very surprising that they came out guns blazing. And I mean, that was a skating attack on the Democratic Alliance. We now have IFP. For me, that was a little bit cautious to say, but, you know, it seems as if the Democratic Alliance are trying to hold the country ransom by even the Patriotic Alliance and other smaller parties, if we may refer to them as such. But the ANC is providing leadership in terms of that, but the ANC for the very first time finds itself in a very difficult situation. And there's been questions that why does the ANC just don't divorce itself from the Democratic Alliance? For me, that will be political suicide. If you look at the proportion that these other 8 parties holds in terms of the number of votes that they have, and remember, going forward, there will become critical. There will be critical situations where the African National Congress or this grouping called the Government of National Unity will need each and every party. But for now, this is one bridge that the ANC needs to cross. And unfortunately, it finds it in a very difficult situation. And perhaps that's why these discussions are taking so long. And some people may criticize this, but I see it actually that it's a good thing that it happens beforehand, and that everything should be ironed out so that going forward, we don't have these back and forth situations. And I'm not naive. There will be instances where the parties may disagree, but let us just hope that they will find one another for the sake of this country.
You know, Prof, my difficulty with what has been happening over the past couple of weeks is that, one, we know exactly what to expect from the Democratic Alliance. And when the ANC courted the Democratic Alliance, it knew that very, very well, right? And when the ANC started these conversations, they told us that it would be dangerous, in fact, and not ideal for there to be an information vacuum. And they took it upon themselves, and they promised us that they would communicate, right, throughout this process. Something I think they haven't done or haven't done well or effectively. And again, Prof, they did say that they wanted to conclude this process as soon as possible, and it has dragged on. And some of the most, patient, partners like your IFP, for example, are the ones who are now frustrated and coming out to say so. And I'm saying, aren't we letting the ANC off the hook here, where it is supposed to play that leadership role in all respects, and it is not doing so?
We're not letting the ANC off the hook, and this has become part of the DNA of the African National Congress, and that's why parties, remember, if the conditions or the environment is conducive to certain things to happen, it will happen. And you've got a situation where your IFP, which in terms of even if you look at the election outcomes, it's low, far below the Democratic Alliance. But it seems as if these parties are now setting the tone. They are taking the country into confidence as to what is happening behind the scenes. And that role should have been played by the Democratic Alliance and perhaps actually by the African National Congress, who we all know it's the leading party in this government of national unity, irrespective of some of the challenges that they still face. They need to take the South African electorate into confidence, and that has not been forthcoming. And in such instances, and that's why we've seen some of these letters now circulating on social media. And yet again, it has also been said that this is not a way to communicate. Why can't these leaders meet and iron out all these differences that they perhaps have? And I strongly believe that that is the leadership role that an ANC that wants to see the conclusion of this matter has to play.
And it doesn't only go for communicating, Prof. In other words, it's not just about taking the nation into your confidence and letting everyone know where things are exactly, but it is also about being on top of things. In other words, it mustn't or it doesn't have to take a Helen Zille to point out to a Fikile Mbalula that this is what you signed off on, remember?
Yeah, but you're not going to get that. That's not how our politics are being played. But that's not an ideal situation, and it should not be like that. But that's the nature, as I've indicated, of the DNA of the African National Congress. That's how they have become accustomed to deal with matters to the disadvantage of South Africa, or perhaps to the advantage of their members or their own party. Because I strongly believe that they're now looking inward in terms of how can they arrest and protect whatever they can. But I will concur with you, that is not an ideal situation. But this is what we have become accustomed to in South Africa.
Why though, Prof? Why should we be subjected to this? I mean, why should we settle for less? People are supposed to be on top of their game.
Well, the question is, we had an opportunity through the ballot box, and the South Africans have spoken, whether we blame people now, we need to commend any democratic means when people are expressing themselves in a democratic way. But yet, yes, once again, the question has always been, why are we accepting situations as they are? But who are we? Because now we're talking about you go have many citizens of this country who keep on supporting the African National Congress and many other parties for obvious reasons. And if they are happy, we can only keep on highlighting this particular situation. But one particular issue that I want to mention, Vuyo, is that it seems as if it's very difficult for our parties to heed the lessons of the past. We have seen the chaotic situation with our local government in terms of coalitions. And surely from there, I think there should have been a lesson that have been learned. But yet again, typical South African politics, it seems as if we are not heeding the signs that we're getting from all these type of lessons to say, but when we've got situations like that, let us, iron out all this difference and move forward. And the question is, if we are taking so long to form a government of national unity, how long is it going to take us to deliberate around very critical issues going forward?
Quick one, Prof. If you were to advise someone who was going to redo this whole thing, in other words, what we've seen since May 29, what would you advise them, or would you advise them to do it differently, and if so, how?
Well, for me, the first route would have been to go the proportional route. But in terms of political power, you will always want to protect what you have. And here we talk about a party that has been ruling for almost 3 decades, not all 3 decades, the African National Congress, losing more than 70 seats in parliament. So they also need to look inwards and say, but how do we arrest this particular decline in terms of electoral support? But that was one way. If an ideal situation was to allocate positions, proportionally, but parties like the Democratic Alliance and all these others that forms part of the government of national unity, they should have allowed the president to actually come up with proposals and take it from there.